Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Students Speak, Florida students share their stories of college in the age of COVID-19. My name is Kristen Hengen, and I'm a research analyst with the Florida College Access Network. I'm very excited to talk with three students from different schools around Florida today to hear about their experiences going to school this past fall semester. I'll have our three panelists introduce themselves shortly, and then we'll move on to about 30 minutes of discussion before we open the floor for questions from the audience. The experiences of Allie, Andrea, and Scotty, along with four other students, have been highlighted in our ongoing series, College in the Age of COVID-19, which followed 7 college students from around the state as they navigated school, work, and family life this fall. Published on our website, the series has explored themes such as online instruction, career pathways, and campus life. We felt it was important to highlight student voices because some of the data that came out in the summer was striking. A May survey commissioned by the Florida College Access Network found that most Floridians experienced lost income due to COVID-19. And more than a third believed they would need additional training or education to find work at the same pay level. And many Floridians at the time foresaw issues with the upcoming semester, with more than 1 in 4 soon-to-be high school graduates reporting changing their post-secondary plans, such as postponing enrollment or attending a school closer to home. We also saw some concerning trends in national data. An October Strata survey found that 2 in 3 college students say COVID-19 has made their opportunities for career exploration worse. To find out more about what was happening in Florida, we went directly to the source and heard from students about their struggles, successes, and coping mechanisms while being a college student during a pandemic. This webinar caps off our series. But before we get started with today's presentation, a few housekeeping items. First, we welcome your questions. Feel free to submit your questions in the box, which you should see on the right side of your screen if you're viewing from a desktop computer. We will allot time at the end of today's presentation for our panelists to answer questions, but you can submit them at any time, and I encourage you to do so. Second, please share what you're learning on social media. We love hearing from you. On Twitter, you can find us at FL College Access, and please use the hashtag FCAN. Finally, this webinar is being recorded. All materials will be available within a week of the recording. I know we have some listeners who may be new to FCAN's work, so I'd like to take a minute to introduce ourselves. At FCAN, we lead the collaborative movement to ensure every Floridian achieves an education beyond high school and a rewarding career. Our vision is to see a Florida working together, where education is the pathway to economic mobility for all. We accomplish our work in 3 primary ways. The first is through research and data that shines a light on promising practices at the local and state level. The second is working with local college access networks, which consist of cross-sector leaders who support local talent development. And the third is supporting statewide initiatives that help students continue their education after high school. To meet the needs of an increasingly diverse and talent-driven economy, FCAN's work is guided by our 7 conditions for success, which you can find out more about on our website. Today's webinar provides great examples of many of these conditions, particularly equitable access and opportunity for everyone, clear information and guidance, and affordable post-secondary education. Lastly, we are always publishing new content, hosting webinars, and sharing news from the field. If you'd like to hear more about upcoming FCAN webinars, legislative updates, events, and policy brief releases, please subscribe at floridacollegeaccess.org/subscribe. Stay tuned for a webinar next month where we will highlight strategies to earn scholarships to help students bridge the gap between what financial aid covers and the total cost of going to college. Moving on to the main event. We'll spend the next 30 minutes hearing from our 3 student panelists about how the crisis has impacted their instruction, academic and career pathways, safety, and mental health. Then we'll save about 15 minutes at the end for questions submitted from the audience. First, I'd like to congratulate these students on finishing a full semester during a pandemic. These are not normal learning conditions, but we made it. To start, the students will introduce themselves, tell us a little bit about their academic background, and give us one word they've used to describe their college experience during a pandemic. I'm going to stop sharing my slides so we can see everyone's faces. I'll ask my student presenters to go ahead and share their webcams. Let's see. We've got 1, we've got 2. Hopefully we've got 3, and if not, I think we'll be able to hear his voice. Scotty, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, so if we are unable to get Scotty's image, we'll go ahead and just have our faces for now. And Scotty, you can chime in when you'd like. All right, Allie, let's go ahead and start with you. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your academic background, and that one word that describes your experience so far.
Yeah, so my name's Allie Schneider, and I'm a senior at the University of North Florida. I grew up in Jacksonville, and I love UNF. I love all things UNF. I'm a sociology and political science double major, even though I always say that sociology is where my heart lies. And I would say the one word to describe this semester or this pandemic experience has just been intense. That'd be my word.
That's a good word. Yeah. Andrea, let's go on to you.
Hi, my name's Andrea. I'm currently a junior at University of Miami. You already know. I'm double majoring in ecosystem science and policy and biology on a pre-med track. One word I would use to describe this experience is definitely stressful. In all aspects of life. Yeah.
Yeah, intense, stressful. Scotty, let's move on to you.
My name. First of all, I want to apologize for not being able to show my camera. I'm having a little technical difficulties, but hopefully, I'll be able to communicate properly with you guys, and it'll be okay. But my name is Scotty Wills, and I'm going to Valencia College. I'm actually a sophomore, and I'm studying journalism there. So if I would have to personally describe this semester or everything that's going on in one word, I'd probably say it's crazy. Like, I feel like everything that's going on, is really crazy. I don't really, it's like, that's the only way I can really describe it. Crazy. Everything's crazy.
Yeah, so stressful, intense, crazy. Sounds like quite a semester. Well, speaking of all of those feelings and things that we are dealing with this semester, we know a lot of students are dealing with more than just school, including jobs, family obligations, and other stressors. I'll ask all 3 of you, tell me about all the things that you're balancing right now and sort of how they were affected when things shut down in March. Allie, we'll start with you again.
Sure, yeah, so right now I'm currently the student body president at UNF, and I'm also the chair of something called the Florida Student Association. So I sit on the Florida Board of Governors, which is obviously a pretty big responsibility, and both of those roles have obviously been massively impacted by the pandemic. I'm also in a sorority at UNF and then, taking my normal classes. So student government's my job. I'm really thankful to be able to earn an income that way. But yeah, kind of everything that I've experienced in those roles has been through the lens of this pandemic.
And you work 40 hours a week with student government, is that right?
Yep.
Okay, so busy. Yes, speaking of busy, Andrea, tell us a little bit about all the things that you're balancing.
Yeah, so on top of school, I'm also part of Green Committee on campus, and it's like you apply and it's just all student-run initiatives on green initiatives on campus that are student proposed and run, and you work with administration and faculty. So I balanced that. I also was part of homecoming committee, so that was super different because usually goes all out with activities and things, and obviously we couldn't do a lot of those things, but we still wanted to have campus spirit because I had classes that were hybrid, so usually classes are twice or 3 times a week. I would go once a week or and video in the other sessions. So that was my main thing. And then also on top of that, of course, studying for MCAT and just seeing how all of my goals and everything have definitely changed. Even though this wasn't I know we'll probably touch on it later, this wasn't something that I had to balance, but I was looking forward to balance probably internships and more shadowing and stuff that unfortunately I didn't get to do this semester.
Yeah, we will definitely get to that. We'll want to hear a little bit more about that. Scotty, tell us a little bit about the things that you're balancing.
So since the pandemic, I feel like I've had to pick up more of what I do at home because ever since the pandemic struck, my mom actually lost her job. So I feel like I have to pick up more of the workload. And then I still have to go to school. And at Valencia, I was actually a part of the Bridges program. So they have a lot of extracurricular requirements and extra steps that you have to do apart from being a regular student. And then I also work. I also do work study at Valencia. So I work as a financial aid ambassador over there. So a lot of things changed, especially at work, because they didn't know how they were going to adapt. Because we're more interactive with students. We usually go to classrooms to do presentations. So ever since they wanted us to kind of stay away, we were trying to figure out how we were going to adapt to the new learning environment. So I feel like that was like a big change for us.
Yeah, well, speaking of that, I want to hear a little bit more about your job, Scotty, because we know that, for example, 83% of college students benefit from some form of financial aid to pay for school. So could you tell us a little bit about maybe how your financial aid needs changed due to COVID-19, but also you have some unique insight because of your job. Tell us a little bit about what other students are experiencing in regarding financial aid during COVID-19 times.
So yeah, so since I'm part of the FLAP program, or the Financial Aid Ambassador Peer Program, they have us working closely to the specialist. So especially during let's say for example this semester during FAFSA Frenzy, where we actually help students fill out their financial aid, we actually found that a lot of people were actually like in need more now because of everything that was going on. So people were like a lot more stressed and they were a lot more worried, like, oh, I lost my job. Can I still apply, or will this affect my financial aid? So those were kind of hard questions that we didn't really know how to answer, and we were having to kind of maneuver with all the specialists. And Valencia was trying to give out CARES Acts, so they were trying to help the students who actually weren't receiving financial aid, or they didn't have, or their parents were making too much at the time, and maybe they lost their job after, because they don't know everybody's situation. So if they applied for a class, they would get the CARES Act, and it would be split between the students. But with my job, really, we just try to teach people about how to maintain financial stability, and what scholarships to apply for, and we just try to help people be responsible financially for situations like this. Even though we don't hope on these situations, or we don't necessarily prepare for pandemics, but we want to always be 2 steps ahead of anything. So I feel grateful that I even had the opportunity to work there, because I felt like I was already like 2 steps ahead with everything.
That's awesome. So from your job, you had this knowledge that was already handy to you in these times when finances may have been a little tighter, and you continue to help your fellow classmates by kind of sharing that information with them.
Yeah, because a lot of people don't know about it. So it's hard trying to explain it to somebody when everybody's so stressed out and everybody's in a panic. Everybody's sometimes it's hard telling people kind of the things that they need to hear, especially about finances, when things aren't going your way like all the time. Things are kind of hard right now, or especially during March when everything was happening. It was really hard to try to explain to people what was happening, and what they were gonna have to do moving forward. So yeah, it was really hard.
That brings me to another question that I'll kind of direct to you, Allie, that we know that a lot of schools changed their support systems to help students during the pandemic, especially students in emergency situations. So I just wonder, Allie, you have such a unique experience, being in student government. Where did you find the most helpful sources of support? What did your school do? And maybe even where do you think students could have used more support?
So I think one of the really big things that a lot of schools did, I'll talk a little bit about something I think relatively unique that UNF did. But I think one thing that was really helpful was moving a lot of the student resources that are usually available on campus to a remote mode. So like the biggest one, I know we're going to talk about mental health later, but like counseling center at UNF is now completely remote, and people still have access to the same level of mental health care. things like our Disability Resource Center, all of those things that are really essential to making sure people are successful in college, we're still functioning. But also at UNF, we had basically an emergency relief fund that was already operating, and it was rarely used just because there weren't a ton of funds in it. And once the pandemic hit, we realized that there was going to be a massive amount of need pretty suddenly. And so like student government put like $250,000. We a lot of emphasis on it in the community and got a ton of donations from like the Jacksonville community, UNF community. Our president took like a salary cut to go to scholarships for people who were struggling. And I think that was a really almost like heartwarming thing that we did, because in a lot of ways it was sort of selfless of the people who were involved, because there was so obviously a need among college students and their families. That relief could be used. It was literally like a check, like it could be used for anything, for rent or food, that type of thing. So I think most universities did the best they could. Again, kind of like Scotty said, no one prepares for a pandemic. No one saw this coming, or maybe they did, but didn't think it would get to the level that it did. So that's kind of what UNF did.
And just tell me a little bit more. Let's say there's a student in need. They kind of lost their job. They don't have support from their parents, and they could not make rent happen in April. What was the process, and how quickly did they get money? Tell us a little bit about how that worked.
Yeah, so there was an application that was live on our Dean of Students website, and student government, we tried to make that as known as possible. We were just advertising it a lot that this was available. There was an application through like our student portal. You just had to provide some evidence for some financial struggles, whether it was like getting furloughed, losing your job, that kind of thing. And after that, it really was a quick process, only like maybe 2 or 3 weeks. The biggest thing was that we still were beholden to some of the financial aid regulations for dispersing money to people. But overall, it was a pretty quick process. They were getting like hundreds and hundreds of applications, and that was really for a while all the Dean of Students office was doing at UNF.
Wow, really cool. And I know, talking to our other students in the College in the Age of COVID-19 project, some other students were able to take advantage of similar things at their own schools. So I'm so happy to hear that that's something that you really saw as successful and quick transition and truly helped hundreds and hundreds of students. Awesome. Sure. Well, you talked a little bit, you previewed it, so we'll turn to it. We know a lot of students are experiencing increased anxiety, stress, depression right now, whether from, struggles with finances. And you all said the words were intense, right? Crazy, stressful. This moving to online instruction has been different. So I just wonder if you guys would tell me a little bit about how you and your peers have coped during this time and what has been really helpful for you. So Andrea, we'll start with you.
Yeah, so it's definitely been stressful, but I think one of the main things that we dealt with was making sure that we had to have open communication, because some people, unfortunately, that were my friends, didn't want to take it as seriously. Some people did, or some people, they had to because they had a job and they were going to be exposed based on the type of job they have or whatever. So we really tried to just have open communication to like ease the mental health and like stress, because we had all been obviously isolated for months before, and then we're kind of stressed going into school and everything. So having that open communication, also just being honest and finding things that are COVID friendly. Like I went to the zoo this semester. It's like the biggest zoo in Florida. It's like a mile huge, unimportant, but it's like very COVID friendly, very easy to distance. They actually even had COVID testing right outside of the zoo. So finding like cool things like that it's like unconventional ways to still have friendships and, meet for a coffee in an open space, sitting far across the table, or just keeping your mask on the whole time. Stuff like that really helped with the mental state of everyone, coping and everything. And yeah, just really being open, honest, and doing everything in a COVID safe manner was really helpful for our mental health, and like doing it together, and a lot of stuff also on school, because like, for example, homecoming, we couldn't do things where it was like, let's all come together and watch like the band play or something. We had like a grab and go stuff, like, oh, this is like a de-stress, like make your own candle, make your own soap, here's the products, and you can do it by yourself at home. Or we had like very few tables, but you know, you could sit down, all were social distance, and kind of like police kind of that stuff. So I would say that's how we tried to cope, just find new hobbies, new things to do, but feeling safe and very honest. And like also, unfortunately, like setting up boundaries, you know, telling people like, hey, I'll see you next semester because I know that you're not being responsible. And it's just, it's frustrating, but it's definitely important to, that was one thing for me that like I had to do for my mental health. And you know, utilizing as well, I would say our school is good at advertising the mental health office, but unfortunately the mental health office is not um, as awesome as they make themselves to be, just because they did find themselves with like a shortage of therapists, and like, you know, hard scheduling times or whatever. So even though those resources were there and they should be utilized, I would say that's something that could ease mental stress. But a lot of people found, oh, they're booked until next month, or oh, you know, a group session's free, but then, you know, if you continue or something, you know, might not be covered. I'm not really sure about that, but I would say like, though, just using honesty, resources, and understanding what makes you feel comfortable is what we did for mental health.
Yeah, I just want to hit on, it sounds like Miami really did a lot to provide socially distanced kind of activities that you could participate in, because you're hitting on this idea that it, and I know I spoke to some freshmen for this project who moved and basically were in their dorm the whole semester, had never had a chance to really make a community or make friends at this new school. So a lot of schools did their best to try to offer, you know, community building activities, which helped even when it was still really hard. Yeah.
Yeah.
Allie, I know you shared a little bit with me about your experiences. Do you want to join in?
Yeah, I think another thing about this pandemic that's been kind of difficult with mental health is that it's not always obvious that it's wearing on your mental health. Like day to day, like I feel fine, right? You know, I'm still FaceTiming my friends, that type of thing. But then when you really sit back and you look at like everyone literally in the world right now is going through this collective trauma, this collective just like experience, it really just increases stress and it increases this anxiety. And, you know, it's difficult when everyone's going through it, so everyone kind of gets it, but no one really wants to acknowledge that they're stressed and anxious. People want to act like everything's normal, but it's so clearly not. And that's sometimes a really difficult thing, like to navigate with professors and with your peers and that type of thing.
Yeah, you bring up a really good point that, you know, I've read some research that has shown that most students say they've been feeling extra stressful or anxious this semester, but most are not comfortable necessarily going to their professors and sharing that. And you almost mentioned like everyone's feeling it. So it's not like we're going to our professors and saying like, hey, I'm kind of struggling. So, and you're virtual for the most part, right? So let's go ahead and get into instruction this semester, which has been different for some of you, but not so different for some of you. So Scotty, we'll start with you. Tell us a little bit about your instruction this past semester, just what it looked like and what worked for you and maybe what was difficult for you.
In terms of instructions, everything really changed because Bridges really had us laid out. Like they'll have specific professors for us for our core classes. So we would go to class like on like Monday and Tuesday, and then to a different class on like Wednesday and Thursday. So now we don't even have the Florida virtual, which I know that they're implementing now to other classes. So we kind of had to like set like our own schedule, which in a way I feel like it was kind of beneficial. I feel like it helped you know, it helped me become more responsible. You know, I had to take control over my own schedule. But I feel like, you know, not having like your teacher kind of in front of you all the time, or not being able to just, if you have a question, to just have somebody there, you can just raise your hand and ask. I feel like all of those things changed, and at first it was like kind of confusing to adapt to, because you don't have that, like, that backbone, because I feel like the teachers are really like the backbones of the class. Like, you can always rely on them. So now I don't really know if I can rely on you, because, like, maybe you won't really respond to my emails, or maybe they're just late on things. So a lot of the times, maybe when a student needs help, he won't be able to get the help, and maybe they'll get it like once they already figured it out, or then they don't want to talk to them anymore. So I feel like everything changed. You don't have that comfort that you feel when you get to meet somebody, because everything's virtual. So you just kind of do like an introduction post, but you don't really know that person. So I feel like just learning, it's I undervalued, like, how important I feel like human interaction really was. Like, from going from one semester to another, like really seeing and talking to somebody, then kind of like messaging them and telling them about myself.
Yeah, so not only were you had a hard time connecting to teachers who maybe are getting so many emails right now, they have a hard time even helping students, but also you're not even connecting with classmates, which makes for a totally different experience as well. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's go ahead and move to Allie, because you also had all online learning and kind of a unique perspective as well.
Yeah, so because I've been in student government a long time, because it has taken up so much of my time, I've been doing mostly online classes for basically the second half of my college experience. So this was the first that I've taken entirely online, but before it'd be 4 online, 1 in person type of thing. So the transition wasn't that crazy for me, but the one thing I will say that I noticed, and a lot of my friends have said this, and a lot of the students that I've interacted with have said this, is where I think that a lot of faculty were like, well, we're not in person anymore, so that means I need to give them more work to make sure that we stay on track. Whereas almost like overcompensating for the lack of in-person instruction. And it's kind of like, whoa, like, wait, that's not the solution here. Maybe a little bit less work. Like, we're basically teaching ourselves a lot of the time. We don't need more readings. We don't need more discussion boards. So that is one thing I noticed that did change with the massive shift to remote instruction.
And Allie, you have experience with online learning and you like it, right? Do you feel like you are as engaged with online learning? Do you feel like it's the same quality?
Honestly, if I could take all in person, I probably would. But the downsides to online like aren't bad enough to like make me not want to take them, I guess. And it works better with my schedule. But I do like online classes. I've had some where it's really obvious that it's like a cookie cutter course that like has been done a million times. And I have some where I've really developed relationships with my professors through a totally online format. So it's kind of hit or miss. I think a lot of it has to do with whether the faculty member, the individual, is trained to do a good online course. But I do like online instruction. I really do.
That's a great point. And I'll just say you're working 40 hours a week. So online learning is really crucial for you in some ways, giving you that flexibility. And I can imagine it's crucial for other students who have, a lot of obligations outside of home. So awesome. Okay, well, for a totally different experience, let's hear from Andrea, who had more of a hybrid format with some in-person classes.
Yeah, so I was definitely worried about in-person classes, but um, I really valued the hybrid format, and for one, Miami actually they ended up requiring that we take a COVID test every 2 weeks. Otherwise, you'd be like locked out of all academic resources and stuff like that. And they offered testing whenever you wanted and stuff. They had a symptom checker, which is you could easily lie on that, but it's another safety measure that you had to do if you wanted to enter into class, or even set foot on campus. And they had people all around randomly doing temperature checks. And they were very accessible. Like, that's something that I valued, because going into hybrid, I was worried about, I don't know who's on campus, who sat in my chair before me. I mean, we ended up in hybrid, we had assigned seats just so they could contact trace if need be, like, oh, the person before you had your same seat, so just letting you know you may have been exposed or whatever. So in class, when I was in person, we had assigned seats. The professor was not allowed to exit like a line square, and there was a plexiglass for the professor covering him or her and the desk, and then there were dividers in between each row and student. This was very interesting because it was like 2 people per table because it was like a socially distanced seating plus the dividers plus the teacher who I saw in some of my classes, definitely, especially in environmental classes, a lot of them, it's really unfortunate that we had to do hybrid because a lot of them are just like you go outside and you survey things, or this is a prime example of this. And being in South Florida, we have like the Everglades and we have like super awesome ecosystem around us, so it's kind of crazy because they're like, oh, we have this like 5 minutes away, or like normally we would go down to the Everglades to look at this as a class, like a class field trip or something. Obviously we can't do that, so they're just showing us pictures now and stuff. So you saw teachers like definitely struggle, like they'd want to walk around the class and like ask questions and get to know you, but they can't. So that was really interesting, and it was really grateful that I had hybrid, because it was great that I got to be in person, because like the other person said as well, like you don't understand the impact of human interaction until you don't have it anymore. But it was really disheartening at the same time because office hours were all online, totally understandable, but I'm someone who like loves to live there in office hours. I love to get to know the professor, ask a lot of questions because I'm always confused. Just like really get to know the professor. And even I've made a lot of my friends in office hours because I'm like, oh my God, we study the same way, like group study. I thrive off of that. So it was just really hard to, almost be there, but not be there completely. And then on the days that I was doing online, it was almost impossible to focus personally, just because the teachers doing their best and moderating, a lot of them, they don't have the capacity to pay attention to the people in front of them and also make sure your cameras are on. Like that's the least of their concern. They're just trying to like teach the best they can. So it's so easy to just disengage and turn off. And like in person, I'm, for example, my stats class, in person, I was taking notes all the time, but when I had my off day in remote, it was just like a completely different ballgame. Like I really had to apply myself, like close off all applications, put away my phone, everything, if I really wanted to learn, because I found that the difference between the learning styles was just so different for me that I thrived in one and then was completely unmotivated in the other. So I found myself just being like, well, I'll learn it the next time, or I'll catch up, or whatever. And it was just frustrating because I liked online because a lot of our exams were online, so I felt more comfortable. I feel like I actually did better on exams because I could take them within a 24-hour window. I was doing it in my own space. I'm not worrying about, oh, that person finished before me, testing anxiety and stuff. But other than that, I would say online was really hard because we couldn't make that connection. And hybrid was so close to that connection, and I'm grateful we did hybrid, but it still wasn't the same.
So I think from everyone, a lot of mixed emotions about, our hybrid and our online options. And I just want to follow up or say, Allie, I think you make a really good point that you could tell when some professors were trained in the online instruction, and that made a big difference. And so that's a really interesting point, I think. So we can see the value in online instruction, especially when there are teachers who have been trained and had a lot of time to prepare those classes. Yeah. Well, just kind of continuing on that same track, beyond shutting down campuses and even moving classes online, COVID disrupted all of our other aspects of life. And I just am curious about how COVID-19 has impacted your work or career readiness. So do you have like new nervousness about your planned career path? Do you have changes about that? I want to know what you think. And I'll stay with you, Andrea, because I know you told me it really disrupted a lot of your things that you were trying to do to prepare for med school.
Yeah, so initially I was not thinking of taking a gap year, have the internship, have the research, but research is literally 5 people in a tiny room. So I wouldn't have felt comfortable even if they had it. But I mean, Miami didn't have research. Miami Med School didn't have any research. You'd have to go like to an independent lab or something, and that didn't sit right with me. If my school wasn't doing it, I probably shouldn't be doing it. So that was stalled for me. And shadowing was also stalled because for most of the part, I really am interested in like dermatology, family medicine, just general physician, just to like get more exposure to that. And all of them were like, oh, most of our cases are COVID. You could come, but that's the risk you're taking. And I was like, okay, I'm not gonna do that. So, you know, I want to apply to med school and with the best application I can put forward, because that's really important. And this pandemic has totally disrupted that. So that has changed my career path, because I really am considering a gap year, which isn't the end of the world. It's just something I'd rather not do. Also, it's changed my study path, because I realized, based on like what I've done and what I am doing and what I find my interest in, I might drop my bio major because I'm really into ecosystem science. So my goal is to be a doctor, but also do research on how climate affects human health. Like that would be the dream, but that was awesome, because I got time to reflect during this pandemic on what I actually really want to do. But it's also like I found out what I want to do, but now I got to take a longer path. So like bittersweet moment. Also, just like in career wise, I feel like I was really invigorated by seeing all the healthcare professionals working together to come together and go the extra mile to care for their patients. So I was really inspired by that, and I was inspired to see like my peers also like step up and like kind of be like, oh, like this is a really important issue we should discuss, not just like obviously in health, but maybe like in health discrimination. Like, I felt like it was a time when a lot of people were like, there are a lot of things wrong that should be addressed. So, mixed emotions. I feel like I've solidified my career path for sure, but this, even though I found what I really want to do and I'm super inspired, it's gonna take longer now. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think you're not alone there, but really shout out to you that you are just inspired to go into medicine, inspired by the frontline workers. I think that is really cool. And I'm really happy that you shared that with us. Scotty, I know you maybe are even considering different areas of study after COVID. Can you tell us a little bit about how COVID has impacted your career readiness path?
Yeah, yeah. So with me, you know, ever since the pandemic started, I'm currently doing journalism, and I still feel like journalism. I have a passion for journalism, but I found myself with a lot more free time. So I just found myself thinking, and at my job, I'm a financial aid, I'm an ambassador, and then my sister's one of the specialists. So we kind of just always end up talking about finances, and we're always bouncing ideas off one another. So then, it got to the point where I'm starting to think about business instead of journalism. So, I'm thinking about business, and I'm thinking about, how I can start maybe investing and saving. So I started looking into things like stocks, and I started learning how to read charts. And then I find myself picking up a economics class. So I feel like during this whole pandemic, I've just had more time to think outside of journalism, because I feel like personally, I feel like that's like a harder career path to get into. Not saying that I couldn't do it, or that I'm not motivated enough to kind of pursue it, but I just feel like it's good. It wouldn't be as bad of an idea to have something to fall back on just in case things don't always work out. And I feel like finances is something that I'm actually like fairly passionate in, because I feel like I'm one of those people who, if I'm not motivated to do something, that I really won't do it. So I feel like I definitely could do something with business and finances. So that's why I've been thinking about like Plan Bs and Plan Cs, and I've been taking other classes besides my regular classes that are for my journalism major. So I feel like those definitely help.
So COVID has already got you thinking about Plan B, Plan C. What's maybe a more stable path if journalism proves to be difficult? So I find that really interesting. And Scotty, you're at Valencia getting your AA, but once you're finished, you plan to go to UCF. right? And then you can study a variety of things once you get there. So now you're open to many things once you get there.
So yeah, so at Valencia they have the direct connect. So once I get my A at Valencia, I can go straight to UCF and I can study there. So yeah, so for the direct connect, that's also a thing that they have at Valencia. That's a really good point.
Yeah, so you're in a great position to, you can still kind of study your general courses now, but when you transfer to the University of Central Florida, you'll kind of be able to be in a position to say, I think I'm going to do finance, or I think I'm going to stick with journalism. So, but I like that you said you've been reflecting, and now you have all these different potential plans.
Yeah, I'm not locked down to a specific career path.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think a lot of students have been changing or rethinking their major or their career path at this time. So I think you're not alone there. And so speaking of kind of what a lot of students have been doing or rethinking, I want to ask you guys our final question that we've discussed. So as school officials and policymakers are making decisions about the next semester or even the next school year, what do you wish they knew about your experience? What might these people just not know about what college students are doing and experiencing? And Allie, let's go ahead and start with you.
Yeah, I would say there's like two things. The one that's more overarching is that there's a lot of cognitive dissonance about with college students about what we want. Because obviously I think everyone has a part of them that's like, gosh, I wish I could be back on campus. I wish life could be back to normal. But then there's another part kind of fighting against that, saying, no, things are not safe enough to go back to campus. We still need to be wearing masks. Life can't go back to normal. And so it's not as simple as just saying students want to be back on campus. And kind of going along with that, I think the second thing is I think we really need to think about and talk about more like what are the motivations for wanting to go back to campus? Is your motivation for being on campus because in-person instruction is a lot better for you? Or is it because you want to be in your college town, going to the bars, going to frat parties? And that's just the reality of the college experience. And I think that's another thing that people need to think about. These decision makers need to, keep in mind.
Yeah, so you're experiencing these mixed emotions that we kind of hit on in this whole discussion. Mixed emotions seem to be a theme. So you both miss the campus life, but you still are cognizant, like we maybe not are out of the woods yet here and you want to be safe. Yeah. Scotty, let's go ahead and go to you. What would you say? What do you want, decision makers to know about your experience?
Well, one big thing that I want to say, I kind of want to touch back on something that we spoke on in the beginning that I feel like I didn't really get to speak on. And I know Allie mentioned it, that she spoke on how important financial aid actually was to some people. Because I know some people actually rely on financial aid. Like that's mostly the reason that they're actually still in school. And it might not be like that in other schools, but at least for Valencia, since it's a cheaper option, a lot of those students actually use that money to pay bills or pay rent. But that's just something that I wanted to speak on that I didn't get to maybe elaborate on when I first spoke on it. But in terms of what I would want other people to know, um, I feel like we should be. I feel like it's better to be safe than sorry. One thing that my advisor said during the beginning of the pandemic, he told me that we'll never know if we overreacted, but we'll definitely know if we didn't do enough. So when they first shut down the schools and they didn't let us go to school, everybody thought they were overreacting. So they were telling us, who knows if we did enough or if we haven't done enough, right? So I kind of want to just say, like if everybody's not in agreement to come back, then I don't feel like we should come back. I feel like it has to be something that we all agree on. I don't feel like there should be any any mixed feelings about it. I don't feel like it should be like a 60-40 because like he said, we'll never know if we overreacted. So I'd rather be safe than sorry, because some people really can't afford to risk. Like maybe some people have like family at home, and they're telling them that it's safe, and then they come home and they get their family sick. So I feel like we should really kind of take our time, because I know a lot of people are trying to rush to get back to school. So I feel like if we're not ready for it, then I don't feel like we should rush it either.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I appreciate you saying that. I know, for example, you're living from home right now, so you are cognizant that you could bring something back to your mom or your sister. So your kind of point is you'd much rather be safe than sorry. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
because in the beginning I didn't think it was that serious until I actually watched, because my auntie actually caught it, my aunt. So, seeing her go through that, even though she survived, but just seeing her in that state, it kind of gave us like a wake up call. People make it seem like, oh, it's not that fatal, not that many people died, but you don't ever want to see your loved one in that condition, because she was like in a coma for like a couple of weeks. She was unconscious, and then when she finally came back, she could barely eat and she could barely talk and she was shivering. So it's just like I don't want to put anybody else in that situation. So I feel like if we can prevent those things from happening, then that's the option that I would want everybody to go with.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Scotty. I appreciate that.
No problem.
Andrea, let's go ahead and turn to you. What would you want people to know about your experience that they might not know?
Yeah, I would definitely everything Scotty said was super amazing. Definitely resonate with that. I just want to like emphasize as well that it takes everyone to do this, like to really combat this virus. Like he said, we all need to have like a unanimous agreement, or maybe not unanimous, but just that everyone is like, okay, we're doing this, because I've seen that with these unclear guidelines, or like just state-wise and also school-wise, a lot of people like to take it as suggestions. And as Ali said, they're college students, so they're still going to go to places and do things that aren't responsible, especially during a pandemic. So I think we need to emphasize the impact that our own actions have on everyone else, and that it does take everyone to do it. Because in what I've witnessed myself, who's contracting COVID and who's been exposed and whatnot, it's the people who are paying for it are the people who are just got unlucky for the most part. You know that it's the people who are taking the precautions, but one meetup, one wrong place, wrong time, they pay for it. And we still don't know the long-term effects of COVID completely. So that's like another aspect that's really scary. So I would say that like policymakers really need to know that they should be very clear. And, you know, you can't tell people how to live their life, but you can say, okay, this is okay to do and this is not okay to do. So when people make a decision, they're not under a false pretense that oh, it's not too bad, or I'm not being too irresponsible. It's so that they understand. And so we can get through just getting through this together requires that kind of clarity. And it's what I think each person deserves, to feel safe and, be able to see this through, see the end of it together.
Yeah, I like that response, that it's important to kind of get that we're all in it together moment, and that resonates with you. Yeah. Well, we have a lot of questions that have come through. So in our remaining 12 minutes or so, let's see if we can hit some of them. So Scotty, a question for you in particular. How did Valencia get the word out to students about additional financial aid opportunities?
So with additional financial aid opportunities, that's actually something that us as the advisors or the ambassadors, that's actually kind of our job, sort of say. So we kind of either send out emails or we'll try to set up skill shops, which we actually had our first one in November. That was our first skill shop since the pandemic, and we did it with Zoom instead of in person. Because usually we would go to class to class to all the freshman students, because those are usually the people who don't really know much about the scholarships or the financial aids and how to apply for them. So we used to do that, and then we used to talk to them about the skills or the financial aid. So instead, they had us, sending emails. They had us verifying everybody's financial aids or verifying everybody who's eligible for financial aid, and then we'd send them an email if they haven't filed it out. So we just, kind of kept in contact with them, made sure we went through everybody's name and everybody who applied late too. So it was a lot, but we just, we made sure we try to get in contact with them. If not through email, then we would try to call them. So yeah,
So
that's really, yeah.
go ahead.
No, I was done.
So some increased communication, and you also pivoted to online presentations that students could watch to get some more information.
Yeah, the skill shops are really helpful, and we have multiple skill shops because since we're online now, we combined all of our campus. Because before we used to split it from West, Osceola, East, so now we kind of combined them, and now we kind of split who does what skill shop during which month or which skill shop comes first or second, and each skill shop will have like a specific topic that ends up tying into financial aid.
Very cool. Okay, a question that I'll just open to everyone. Have there been any positives or silver linings you found in the past semester? Allie, you look like you have something.
Yeah. So like I've mentioned, I kind of took on a lot of intense roles right around the time of the pandemic. And one thing that I think I learned, or at least maybe it cut me a little bit of slack, was how to give presentations well. Like usually if this is a normal year, I'd be having to give these presentations in front of like these big boards who are all like, super established people. But instead I was doing it from my living room, which maybe didn't help with my presentation skills, but made it less stressful for me. But yeah, I think another thing I always say that if anyone ever asks me in a job interview, like, when have you faced a crisis at work? Like, I'm never going to be able to stop talking because I've faced so many crises at work just in the past few months. So I think that's sort of a positive. I feel like I've learned a lot about the human condition and what it really takes to be a leader in crisis. Still learning, but yeah.
That's a great answer. Yeah. Anyone else want to chime in?
I've realized some silver lining is that like the teachers are humans too. Like, I mean, love to get to know them in office hours and everything, but like you can like seeing them struggle a little bit with like online things or just like being really just like personal in emails. It's like kind of nice because you're like, oh, okay, like they'll be like, oh, this is too hard, like forget that, like I'm don't do that assignment, or like I'm making this easier or something. So like it made me realize like more so that they like actually, like at least my teachers, like I felt like they really did care and they really were trying to adjust, even though they may not have been like the most tech savvy, especially in throughout this. They're just really like, pushing through it just like us. So I thought that was nice. And another thing, I already talked about it, but just like taking my tests at home, I don't know why. Well, I do know why, because I have testing anxiety, but it just made me feel a lot more comfortable. And you can try and plan your schedule. It teaches you time management, which is like blessing and a curse, because you're like, oh, I'm really bad at time management, but then you're like every day you're able to work on that. So I would say that's kind of the silver lining. And lastly, I was actually able to go to a lot of like Zoom professional events, which solidified what I wanted to do with my career. Because knowing me, I would have been like, oh, it's 4 already and I have to go at 5. Like, I'm too tired, it's a Friday, or like I'm too tired, it's a Thursday, I have a test the next day. It's super easy to like zoom in, zoom out, maybe be there for like half the talk or whatever without being like the only person standing up leaving the room in the middle of their discussion. So that was also a silver lining. Even though we missed that connection, it was like there's still, opportunities to be seen.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. Lots of good virtual opportunities around the world that we can join in and learn from. Yeah. Okay, well, I'll ask our last question here as we wrap up, and I'll ask it to each of you. I love this question. What's your advice for any high school seniors attending college next year? And I think that's interesting, considering maybe things will look a little bit more normal, maybe not, I don't know. What would your advice be? Scotty, I'll start with you.
So some advice that I would probably give, or that I would give a high school senior, would be calm down. You know, it's not as hard as they probably told you it was, and you know, try to enjoy it because like time is really flying. Like I feel like I was like it was my freshman year or my first semester like a couple of weeks ago, but you know, thinking back at it now, like I'm a sophomore now. I'm going into my third year, and a little bit like next semester I'll be in my third year. So you know, take it easy. It's not the end of the world. I feel like this is where you really figure out who you are as a person. I feel like especially like your first 2 years, for me at least, I feel like that's where you'll get the most character development, or where you'll kind of realize like who you really want to do, because you'll go to college thinking you want to be this person, but you realize that you're not, that's not the person who you really are, or you realize that that really is who you are. So I feel like um just have an open mind, just take the challenge. If you're struggling, you know, embrace it, and just, you know, be ready. I feel like you should always, you know, kind of be grateful to be in this situation. You know, not a lot of people even get to go to college. And, you know, with everything going on right now, I feel like, you know, we have opportunities now. I feel like if there was a chance to, you know, jump on the opportunity, I feel like now would be the best chance.
Oh, what fabulous advice. I'm feeling personally inspired. Andrea, let's go to you. What advice might you give?
I would tell them to be flexible and to also be responsible. You know, they probably missed out on a lot of things, or a lot of things were different as it was for all of us. But if they want that college experience, or if they want, you know, just like general connections, like you said, it's been really hard for incoming freshmen to make friends when you can't even be in the same room together inside. Just to be responsible, to be flexible, and also if you want something or accommodations, like there's no way the school can say we can't do that after they've literally changed their whole curriculum and how they do things. So just be really determined, really flexible, and responsible through it all, because it can get done.
Great advice. Self-advocate for yourself. Awesome. And we will wrap it up. Allie, with you, what advice would you give?
Yeah, so I would say one big thing is that your professors are just as desperate for interaction as you are. And that means if you email them and say that you'd love to chat, you'd love to come to office hours, like they're gonna love that. People always say like, go to office hours, go to office hours. That has not changed. Like go to office hours and it's gonna like enhance your experience a lot. And the other thing is that even though it's a lot harder to make friends right now, don't stress if you come out of your freshman year like, I don't have that many friends. The spring of my freshman year, I had literally like 2 friends and I'm not even friends with them anymore. And now like my social life is super robust and I have a lot of people I can count on. So like you have plenty of time to make connections and everything's going to work out and it's going to be fine.
Well, you three are so wise and fabulous. I'm so grateful for you sharing. I wish you could see all the questions that have been submitted. People want to hear from you. So I am just so grateful that you shared your time with us. And thank you to everyone for listening. And look for our series on our website, College in the Age of COVID-19, where we interview these lovely faces. And we have some great quotes from them as well. So thanks everyone for spending this afternoon with us. Thank you, presenters. Yay, we're done.